What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Bodacious Rant. Hope everybody's doing great. One of the most anticipated movies, in my opinion, has finally come out. And by most anticipated, it's like I said, it's by me, really. I've been looking forward to this movie since I heard about it. It got delayed last year just due to the writer's strike and, the actor's strike. So just all the strikes. So it finally came out and has graced us in all theaters everywhere. And we are talking about the latest movie from director Jeff Nichols, which is Bikeriders, which is based on a book by, it's based about a book on like a motorcycle gang out like in the 60s, early 70s and stuff. So this is kind of a biopic slash fictional story. It's basically kind of like it's a liberal retelling of this book. This is a non-spoiler review as always, so please do not forget to give us a like if you do enjoy the video. Ring the bell to stay up to date for notifications, and of course subscribe, just because we appreciate you all joining us and listening to our rants over the last couple years and just recent months. Really, we really appreciate you guys, especially with our Inside Out 2 and Furiosa reviews. Appreciate you all for that. So essentially, this movie stars has a really great cast, actually. Not only just with the main stars, but the supporting actors. Like, we got Tom Hardy, Austin Butler from Dune Part 2, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, Jodie Comer from Free Guy, and then the show Killing Eve. They definitely anchored this movie really well. But we're also joined by, like, Michael Shannon, Bo Knapp, Dave Harriman, just a slew of awesome actors. And actually, one of the guys... he played a kind of a comedic relief guy. He was one of the snipers in Civil War Burn. That was Carl Glusman, I think. I can't really say his name. But anyways, essentially this is about... also it has Mike Faced from Challengers. So he plays the photographer that essentially is telling the story of these bikers, or we see through the lens of his the story. And essentially it's about just a motorcycle club in the 1960s out of... I think it was Indiana. It's something
around Chicago.
Yeah. Okay. Duh. Why am I thinking that makes sense? It's on their stupid cuts. It's based on a gang based out of Chicago, Illinois, and essentially they just literally a motorcycle club. And then as the years go on from the 60s to the 70s, the tides change, and essentially, like Bob Dylan said, the times are changing, and Austin Butler, Tom Hardy, and Jodie Comer just do their best to adapt and figure out what they want to do with their lives with this club. So, with all that being said, it's the way I kind of was watching it, and I think for those who if you're interested in seeing it, it's kind of like a mix between Goodfellas and Sons of Anarchy, and that's a very broad spectrum, just because narratively I felt like it was trying to do the Goodfellas thing. But, motorcycles, clubs, and just, a lot of different personalities and characters thrown together like Sons of Anarchy. So I really enjoyed it. Did it live up to my expectations? For the most part, yes. Again, I'm really into the automotive kind of stuff like that, like with Furiosa, Mad Max, Fast and Furious, sort of. That's becoming a blurred line nowadays. But then Bikeriders, it's a little under 2 hours, but some people I have heard say it's slow, so... To each their own on that one. But Bern, what did you think of this movie?
Yeah, I mean, coming into it, I was under the impression that this movie was going to be like the movies that you mentioned, like Goodfellas, and a little bit of like that with the mix of Sons of Anarchy, and it kind of was and it wasn't, especially with the way that they choose to have the framing device of this movie. It kind of subverts that and sort of deconstructs it on its own, and that I was kind of pretty surprised by that, because I was going and expecting one thing and got almost the complete opposite, but not really. So it was kind of interesting, my experience with it going in. But what I did find myself was, really enjoying the narrative of this story. It's something that it's like a side of, like, I guess, culture that I'm not really particularly interested in terms of like the whole like biker thing, but getting sort of like a outside looking in view into it, that really grabbed me pretty much. And I thought that the framing device, although it was pretty interesting and served as a very kind of like a outsider's perspective on this sort of story, I think there were some parts of it that were a little bit hard to latch onto. But the parts that were definitely not hard to latch onto were the actors themselves, in particular the big three with, Jodie Comer, Austin Butler, and Tom Hardy. I thought all three of them were absolutely excellent. I mean, you go in, you if you know them, you're going to get a good performance, and I thought they did a fantastic job here. Even with, the material being not as dense as I would have liked, I thought their performances really elevated the roles that they were in, and I thought they carried the movie for the most part, and I thought they did a really good job. Of course, not just them. I think all the bit players, all the sub characters that you mentioned, all those actors did a fantastic job too. And the one that I, talked to you about, coming out of the movie, Boyd Holbrook, really took me by surprise. Very different role for him. I really appreciated him and his character. But yeah, getting sort of this outsider looking in view at this biker club throughout the 70s, and sort of seeing how it starts off as one thing and sort of ends up turning into another thing was such an interesting, like look into that side of life and stuff. And, since it's, based on, journalistic, photographs and like a book that was written, it's an interesting take us sort of like in a broader spectrum, seeing how the times are changing, not only for the bike riders themselves, but I guess culture as a whole, and you can expand on that into like bigger ideas. So I thought this sort of like smaller condensation of that idea was really cool. So I did really appreciate it on that aspect.
Yeah, and that's very fair. Like I said, I'm really into like motorcycles and cars and stuff. So this was like right up my alley with when it comes to that. Um, the only even though I really enjoyed this movie, there are only a couple things I do critique it on. Kind of like how you brought up that the story of it, the material could have been a little bit more in depth with certain things. I think especially I do agree with you in our private conversations regarding Austin Butler. While he looks the part, he's got just this force to him in the movie. It just he could have been written a little bit better. But it's almost like they were just casting him just because he looks the part, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but it just doesn't do much for him in my opinion. But Tom Hardy, he always kills it with even his bad movies. It's still a joy to watch him in my opinion. And Jodie Comer, she is the star of this film, hands down. She was just both hilarious, both both serious and stuff like that. Like you get all sides of all points of view from her, and she really kind of gives a good perspective, not only on being on the inside of the club, but also as like someone from the outside looking in. So I really liked her on that. Not only was Boyd Holbrook great, Norman Reedus, being a known motorcycle enthusiast, yeah, his character in it was pretty enjoyable to watch. I guess that's my other critique, is that when you have such a great cast of all these awesome actors in their own way, it's hard to focus on all of them or get a little bit of their get their due in. So that's my only thing sometimes, is when you have such a great cast, it's hard to balance that. But aside from that, I'm giving it a hard 4 out of 5 for me, just because I really enjoyed it. I think it's a solid movie. Definitely one of those ones that really kind of took me out of my seat for the most part. Like we've talked about how some movies are lately, they're just doing their jobs, and not to say that this one isn't serviceable. Me personally, I really liked it, so I would definitely recommend it. It's not playing in IMAX or Dolby, but I still think it's worth it, especially with the summer heat coming in. It's definitely one of those movies that I don't mind going back to watch, to not only get some free AC, but just to enjoy again.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately for me, it does fall into that second category that you did mention, where it was fine, and I think it's because the issues that you had with the movie were a lot bigger issues for me too, because it does get to a point in this movie where it does feel like more of a depiction of a series of events, and less than a character story. I think Tom Hardy as Johnny, I think he has the most clear, sort of character arc that we get from the beginning to the end of the movie. Whereas Austin Butler and Jodie Comer, as great as they are, and I do think Jodie Comer as well is the star of the show, I do feel like they are both defined by the love story in this movie, and the love story in this movie is just kind of hollow. We don't really get many scenes of these two characters just being around each other and just experiencing the love story. We just know that they're in love, and then the story just kind of tells you that, and and it just kind of goes on to the next bullet point of what happened to this biker club. So it did feel at points that it was torn between whether being, a story about these characters or the story about this like organization as a whole. And I wish they could have found a better middle ground of, between those two things. But as of what we got, again, I wasn't really expecting this for this type of movie. I was expecting more of like a Sons of Anarchy, but a movie. But again, what I got was a little bit better than I was expecting. But at the same time, it did disappoint in what it was trying to do. But I applaud them for the effort, for sure. And I do think this is worth a check out if you're into sort of like, the biker culture and seeing how it started and how it sort of ended up. If you're kind of into that sort of thing, this movie is kind of documentary-esque in that sense. So it is cool for, some people who have that sort of interest. But if you're looking for more of something character-centric, I don't think it's quite there, but maybe there's an edit out there that exists that does have those things. It just unfortunately didn't make it into this one. So for me, this one's going to be a 3 out of 5. Solid movie. Jeff Nichols, he continues to put out solid movies. Just for me, a lot of the times they just leave me a little bit wanting, and this one was also the case, but still a good movie nonetheless.
Yeah, that's very fair. Like I've told you, Bern, this is just one of those exceptions in my liking where I know it's flawed, because I don't disagree with you on your critiques. It's just one of those things. I'm like, I had a lot of fun with it, and I really enjoyed the characters, so I can forgive it for its faults. But for those of you who did happen to catch it this weekend, please let us know what you thought in the comments. We'd love to get everybody's opinions and everybody's takes on it in the end. Did you was it kind of meh like with Burn, or can you forgive it like I did? We'd love to know. But until next time, everyone, we appreciate you all tuning in, and just keep on staying bodacious and keep on ranting for us.
Absolutely, everybody. Thanks again for all those views, and be good, be safe, and as always, we'll catch y'all on the next one.